why Australia loves and hates negative gearing. Oh, Jim, you've intrigued us. As a property investor in Australia, I'm going to say something controversial. Negative gearing needs to go. So here we go. The final bit. The negative gearing is symptomatic of a dysfunctional and inequitable property market. But advocating for its removal or retention without addressing the issue of holding costs is a bit like rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. It misses the bigger structural issues threatening the whole shebang. That's quote unquote, Ben. What's needed is a comprehensive overhaul of the property tax system and a rebalancing of investor incentives to align the market with sound economic principles, which will help to protect rental availability and affordability. Isn't this where the industry should be focusing the debate? I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, particularly if you think I'm off base.
Jim, what a fabulous question. When a state, in most cases, relies on 40 to say 53% of their total revenue take relating to property taxes in some shape or form, the system is completely stuffed. And in terms of when 44% of the cost of a new land and house to be built on that land is taken up in taxes, state taxes, the property system is stuffed. What we've got to understand about this great country of ours is that when we colonised the country and when we basically saw that this great southern land had an enormous potential to be one of the greatest countries in the world with some of the highest standards of living associated with that and with an enormous amount of opportunity. Post the First World War and then also the Second World War, the country decided that it needed to have a greater population, right? To obviously realise and increase those living standards, we needed to have workers to do the jobs to create the nation. And so we are a nation of immigrants. When you bring people into a society, you've got to have somewhere for them to live. And not everyone's going to live in expensive motels or hotels and so forth. So you start building longer term rental accommodations because we know with most immigrants that arrive, they spend 6 or 12 months finding their feet, trying to work out where they're going to get gainful employment and where they can set their lives up. And so in the 1920s, as part of our taxation system, that was baked in. But what it has meant is that those market mechanisms that it is, you know, and then it's been layered upon on top of that. So it's been layered upon in terms of land tax. It's been layered upon in terms of higher stamp duties and so forth. One of the things for me is that as per negative gearing, if we don't have that higher income, we don't have that borrowing capacity. And that can sometimes rule us out. So if I'm a nurse or a school teacher or a police officer or a fireman, and I've demonstrated that I want to do services to the community in a social good. So I've chosen a social good career as opposed to potentially a personal career that I'm all about earning as much money. This is one of my chances to be able to build wealth and build a financial security for my family. So if we did adjust negative gearing for those lower income earners, their chance of actually getting into the market and building wealth is also compromised. And so we're always going to need rental properties. We're always going to need, in my opinion, it's between around the 25% of properties across the nation to allow for that human mobility and that economic movement. And so when a city or a town or that has their opportunity to have a prosperous couple of decades, they need those workers, but they're not going to come in and just buy a house outright. So, you know, the businesses then turn and say, where can I find that rental accommodation? And it's not there. They have to put them up in hotels and motels. And all of a sudden that doesn't become economically viable. And so they don't start those projects. They don't make that investment that creates those jobs. These mechanics and these mechanisms are delicate in terms of when you're pulling different levers and releasing different levers, there's going to be some certain consequences that we think we understand, but there's also going to be some unintended consequences associated with that. So a brilliant question, and I really thank you very much for it, Jim.
Jim, your premise is on the fact that the whole system doesn't work when someone's actually running at a loss with some future expectation of gain. And so my question to you is, what's the alternative? Well, we know you can't save your way to retirement. Secondly, the pension in this country, I would love our community to see this as it is a safety net. That is it. It should be a safety net that allows you to have a swing at something that is better, is we are prepared to make losses early the vision of that future gain. So again, Jim, to Ben's point, great argument. But if we don't do that, what's the alternative? Clearly, shares, crypto, building a business. There's a ton of other things that you could do, but in terms of a risk-adjusted return, I'd argue that residential real estate is the number one.